Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and it is a great week already. Why? Because this is the time of year where we get excited about a bunch of grown men running around in their underwear performing athletic feats that a majority of us watching can no longer do. That's right, it is Combine Week. The top NFL draft prospects all headed to Indianapolis to participate in on-field drills, workouts, and of course, those interviews and medical clearance as well. So a lot of different things going on down in Indy this week leading up to the NFL draft. So this video is all going to be about my top players to watch at the 2022 NFL Combine. Now, if you are wanting deep diving information and you're wanting to take a look at these guys in more of a breakdown, this video is going to be a broad overview. However, if you head over to Headliner U here on YouTube, that is one of our other channels here, subscribe to that channel and pick up everything Chris Chouse is dropping over there, because it is some really great in-depth views of the players, where here on the Fantasy Headliners, we kind of do more of a broad overview to kind of get you familiar with some of the players and some of the storylines. So make sure you go over there and you subscribe to that channel. But for this episode, again, we're going to be talking about some of my top players to watch, why their value might be kind of holding on to this combine a little bit, where it could go one way or another. But just keep one thing in mind: never overreact to the combine. Never do it. But let's go ahead and jump into it. My first player to watch is going to be out of the University of Michigan, Aidan Hutchinson, edge rusher, and right now he's projected as a top 2 pick. A few different things could be happening here. He could be going number 1 overall to Jacksonville. He could be going number 2 overall to Detroit. Jacksonville could end up taking a tackle. Jacksonville could end up taking Kayvon Thibodeau. Maybe Thibodeau goes number 2. Really, what Aidan Hutchinson is doing at the combine in Indianapolis is just establishing himself as that top edge rusher. I still believe there are a lot of people out there that look at Thibodeau and like him a little bit more over Hutchinson as far as some athletic traits go. But if that's the case, you have not seen enough of Aidan Hutchinson, and I think that's going to kind of help establish himself this week as being that top edge rusher. Now, one thing I also want to keep in mind, or want you to keep in mind while watching this, is that some of these players may announce at some point in time that they are not going to participate in certain drills. Now, as of now, I haven't heard anything like that about Aidan Hutchinson or some of the other guys that we're going to talk about. But for some reason, if that pops up, just keep in mind, oh, this guy's not actually participating in certain things. Well, that may have come out after this video was recorded, or they may be doing other things while they're there, still participating in interviews and things of that nature. So for Aidan Hutchinson, for me, really at this point, just solidifying himself as the number 1 overall edge rusher in this year's draft. I think he definitely has that opportunity to establish himself as such. Just needs to show off some of those physical traits, show that he is continuing to get stronger. Some of those agility drills that they do show that he has that same bend, that same agility that Thibodeau does. If he does that, he should be no lower than 2 off the board come draft time. Now, kind of a group of players is the top QB prospects, and really that includes Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, and Carson Strong. So for some of these guys, like Matt Corral, he's not going to be participating in some certain things because he's coming back from an injury. But for these other guys, you know, the QB draft this year is interesting because is it bad? No, I don't think it's bad by any means, but there is a lot that is left to be desired. So when you take a look at some of the top prospects, there's nobody that sticks out as the number 1 overall quarterback like there was last year. Like last year when all of this went down, when these drafts started, we knew what was going to happen with a majority of these guys, right? Trevor Lawrence was going to be one of the top guys drafted. We knew Trey Lance had a high ceiling. You take a look at the other guys that were in, obviously Justin Fields was a guy that was kind of up and down throughout the process. Mac Jones rose really, really fast. We knew how many guys were going to be going in that first round last year. This year, really up until the last couple of weeks, there was talk of maybe one or two of these guys going in the first round. Now, after a really strong Senior Bowl, Malik Willis is being looked at as maybe the top quarterback option in all the league. You've got Kenny Pickett coming out of Pittsburgh, who was really kind of the safest option, maybe the most NFL ready quarterback. Sam Howell was a guy who last year was looked at as the top quarterback prospect of 2022, and it wasn't really that close. And kind of a down performance in college this year after losing a lot of weapons has kind of pulled people back on him a little bit. So a lot of these guys at this point here in the combine have an opportunity to go show off some of those skills that just need to show refinement. So, hey, can they hit those accurate passes? Can they, show off that arm strength? How well do they interview? There is a lot of really good opportunities this week for these top quarterback prospects to show where they are at in their maturity level and their development level. Because a few of these guys are going to end up going first off the board. Not first off the board. Some of these guys are going to end up going in the first round. Is it going to be just one? Will it be two? Will it be three? Is there a potential for four to happen? Keeping an eye on that. These guys have a chance to really show some of those traits that bust off the paper and what that means for their draft stock. So important week for the top quarterback prospects. Really interested to see how some of these guys perform. Again, keeping an eye on that arm strength, the accuracy, and then one of the areas that we won't have any information on is obviously those interviews. That's probably going to be the most important for these top quarterback prospects. Next one on my list, going back to defense, is going to be Nakobe Dean, linebacker out of Georgia. Right now, my projection for him is kind of a mid to late first round pick. Now, one of the things about Nakobe Dean that people harp on him for, he's a little bit on the smaller side. Do I hold that against him? I really don't. I don't hold that against him the same way some other people do. Why do they hold it against him? I'm not really sure, because the dude is an absolute animal. I mean, if you watched the college football playoffs, you would have saw how just the guy's energy, his passion, his motor, his drive, all of that showed out on the field. And sometimes you just can't measure those things with some measuring tape and a scale. You can't do that. And we've seen that plenty of times where guys have come out and played, maybe, measured a little bit on the smaller side or looked a little bit on the smaller side, but they play much bigger than what they are. Nakobe Dean comes in at 6 foot, 225 pounds. So he's a little bit on the smaller side. Devin Lloyd, though, who's considered by some the top linebacker in this draft, he's 6'3", 235. So he's not all that bigger than what Nakobe Dean is. And I've actually got Nakobe Dean still over the top of Lloyd at this point. And there's nothing against Lloyd. I just like Nakobe Dean a little bit more. I mean, this is a guy that can go sideline to sideline, and that's what I'm looking for in the combine this week. People are going to say a lot about his size, but how much does he bench? How well is his agility? How does he work through those agility drills? How fast is his 40? Those are the things that I want to see this week. Show off some of those athletic traits that maybe people are overlooking because of your size and say, hey, I play a lot bigger and a lot faster than what I look. Don't take that stuff to heart. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to ball out for your team. This is Nakobe Dean's chance to absolutely show off those things. And then, of course, some of those intangible things as well that he will get a chance to talk about in his interviews with teams. I still love Nakobe Dean. For me personally, he's a mid first round pick, but looks like projections could put him anywhere in the mid to late first round. A wide receiver I want to take a look at is Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State. Projection right now for me looks to be maybe late first, early second round pick. Now, Jahan Dotson, this is a case of kind of just being left in the dust of the other top receivers because everyone's talking about Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams coming off his knee injury is still being talked about. And Jahan Dotson is just kind of sitting there saying, all right, it's go time. Let's do this. Jahan Dotson, redshirted senior coming out of Penn State, is going to be a really, really good fit for a lot of teams that need a field stretcher. But the thing that can raise Jahan Dotson a little bit more in the draft and help his draft capital is to see how he does with his route running during those drills at the combine. That's what I want to see. Is he a guy that's going to stay on the outside and be like a strictly stretch the field type of player? Is he going to be a guy that can go into the slot and do a few things as well? Can he win with a larger route tree than what maybe NFL teams realize that he has? That's what I want to see. How crisp is he coming out of his breaks? How well does he break down coming in and out? How well does he accelerate out of the break? I don't want to see just the 40-yard dash straight line speed. That's great for Dotson because that's what he can bring to the table. I want to see everything else because if he just shows the straight line speed and he really is that field stretcher, he's still going to be a second round pick. But really to solidify himself at the end of the first round, he's going to have to show a little bit more, in terms of his ability to win at different levels. If he does that, he's going to end up seeing his draft stock go up, and he's going to have a much better draft day capital than what we're seeing right now. Next up, out of Texas A&M University, a guy that may be overlooked a little bit too much right now. Isaiah Spiller has an opportunity to cement himself as the number one running back in this draft with a really good combine if his numbers can come in better than Kenneth Walker and James Cook and Breece Hall. Kyren Williams kind of in that discussion as well, but those are really the guys right now that are being considered as RB1. Kenneth Walker is kind of consensus RB1 right now. Breece Hall has started to pick up a lot more talk as of late. I think some people are concerned about him just because they feel like David Montgomery got hyped up so much out of Iowa State and just hasn't always lived up to the expectation that people are kind of taking that unwarranted anger or whatever it is that they have against David Montgomery and kind of placing it on Breece Hall. But with Isaiah Spiller, I mean, he is a guy that is a legit candidate for RB1, but I think he is kind of getting left behind right now when people are talking about the other candidates. Isaiah Spiller can be a starting 3-down back. I mean, he is a guy that has good vision. He can run inside the tackles. He can run outside. He can catch the football. He really can do everything. But I think right now with Kenneth Walker obviously having the huge season that he did, Breece Hall's name coming up a little bit more as of recently, I think that it's kind of putting Isaiah Spiller kind of to the back burner. Now, obviously for NFL GMs and things like that, some of the media talk and the talk that you see on Twitter and the overhype that you get, that doesn't really get to them, right? I mean, that's one thing where you take a look at that and, Isaiah Spiller, teams aren't going to forget about him just because the other people are talking more about these other guys. That doesn't happen. However, in the perception of the public, I would like Isaiah Spiller to have a really good combine because if he does, that's going to kind of bring him back to the forefront and get people talking about him a little bit more. And hopefully that gives him an opportunity to hopefully separate himself in some of those numbers between Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. I think Isaiah Spiller has a great chance to do that. How does he show out in the agility drills? How does he perform on the field? There's a lot of different things that I see coming from Isaiah Spiller this week, and they're all positives. I would be surprised if Isaiah Spiller has a negative combine. He's just too good of a player, and I want to see him really show out so he can separate himself from those other guys and potentially get himself to the top running back off the board. If he can do that, he goes from being a mid to late second round pick to maybe a little bit earlier in the second round. He could potentially get himself over Kenneth Walker if he can have a really good combine. So I'm excited to see what this guy does, how he balls out, and what he can do to move that draft stock up the board and make himself the number one running back in this draft. As of right now, I've still got him as my RB2 behind Kenneth Walker, but it is a very, very close. And I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people expect. But then again, that's just a few of the players that I'm really keeping an eye on this week that I think have a lot to win and a lot to lose by having a really good combine. We never want to overreact, though. So if any of these guys have a bad combine, it doesn't mean that we automatically throw away everything that we've done on them all season long, all off season long. This is just another opportunity to take some of those things and move them in and use them towards our research and our evaluation a little bit more. But do me a favor, if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, I need you to hit that subscribe button and stick around for all the great off-season content. We got mock drafts coming. We've got more. I mean, we'll be live the night of the draft. We got some nice giveaways that we're going to be doing. Got a prize picks show a little bit later on in the week because there's prize picks out for combine numbers right now, which will be a lot of fun. Also, make sure you hit that like button for me. If you appreciate the content, definitely need you to hit that like button and leave a comment down below. Who is a player that you are keeping an eye on at the combine this week? Hopefully everybody out there is staying safe and healthy, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on third down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that chub life. Stuck in a rut and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation.
I'm a headliner.